who has brainwashed us. That's how good the black man is. The black man has brainwashed the black man to believe it is the white man who has brainwashed them. Fuck are you doing? Man is. Do you know how much the black man intimidates? Look at you guys. You sold yourselves. You sold yourselves. You sold yourselves. But you are convincing us to hate the white man. When you are always talking negative, finding faults, criticisms, you have all your desired goals. Because good and evil cannot live in the same space. Please, YouTube, if you don't mention anything, I can't. If you don't write, I can't mention it. But apart, topic ni Africans sold Africans. Mitra, I know we threw them off. Now we do mazin, so now I just wrote continue. I'll find a topic that would accept it. But I'm saying again, in the ongoing event of Africans being asked to leave the countries they are residing in, the deportation, the migration issue that we are forcing ourselves to ignore. We need to get to the root cause of it. Because if we don't get to this root cause and think that water will find its own level and concentrate on this tip of the iceberg called government in our countries, we are going to wail. We are going to cry in tones because we have been misled for centuries, and that is where lies the basic problem. If we do not start from there, and you Africans in the diaspora, you lose your residence, and you come and join us in this jungle, this place is dog chop dog. And it did not start today. And those people you people claim are doing ritual murders to sustain material gains. They are only killing one or two people. Slave trade. They were selling our ancestors in hundreds and thousands and millions over the centuries. The politics of today is never going to go right because the foundation of the politics of today is lies. We have made the wrong people look evil. They have made us believe that what is evil. Why do they still keep going there for IMF? And why are these evil white people still evil yet benevolent enough to give us money to the extent that when we can't even pay these monies, they forgive these debts. And yet they are evil. Our castles are filled with lies. Our castles tell stories of how the white man bundled away our ancestors, how they were shackled and dragged to the door of no return, and how they were marched onto the ships, and how they were packaged like sardines, mackerel. But nowhere in these history books do we read how inhumane our uncles and grandfathers and aunties, our sisters and brothers, our fathers, how our blood relatives bundled us, how our tribesmen, how our kinsmen, how our rival tribes, however, but natives of the same land sold themselves. They brutally marched these slaves. Now ask yourselves, if the African slave traders, if the Ghanaian slave traders, if they were transporting, when they were transporting these slaves, let's say from the north to Cape Coast, these slaves that when they were even shackled on the ships could manage to climb atop and jump into the sea and drown with as many people who were shackled with them. You think when our African traders, slave traders, were transporting these slaves, they left them to walk freely? No. They also had them tied, even if not with chains, probably with very strong cords that grow around trees. The ones that were used for the cornel knot. So when you are going to buy a goat, and you get there and the person bringing you the goat bundles the goat up, tied up. The goat is tied both hind legs and whichever one, even tied together again. When you get that goat, or when you are buying a big chicken, cockerel, whatever, and they bring it and they have tied the wings together and tied its legs tightly, its feet tightly together. Will you untie this bird or mama? Or what is it? Is it? Will you? No. You will probably also find a firmer way of tying this animal, if especially if you are going a long distance. So they did portray that the white man used shackles to bundle up our ancestors and pack them like mackerel. But never once did they depict how the African was transporting a fellow African as a slave, tied up, marching barefooted. Or you think they gave them shoes? And they were walking from all parts of the country to the coast where the ships were. And this was in exchange for things like alcohol, like mirror. They called them luxury. I have an image I put up as a thumbnail, and I had it created in the sense of being symbolic and also education. so that this symbolism and educational purpose would represent the transatlantic slave trade when you look at the image. These are things we don't have in our storybook, so we created this. Some village with like traders, a group of people who are in this case goods and services. They are sheep, a flock of sheep in human beings being sold. And in this same image, you see in the background European ships, which were anchored near the coast. So when you go to like Cape Coast Castle, you see the communities around there. This is where the rich people are. The big when people are being bragging like, hey, hey, if you are bro for if you no word training. The European ships, they were anchored. They were anchored, and they can't anchor in Damango. They can't anchor in any part of the north. They can't anchor in Kumasi. They can only anchor on the coastlines where the sea was. So those villages. Then in the same picture, you will see African leaders, African merchants, African traders, the elite. They were standing at one side and they were negotiating with the European merchants. But when you look in the picture, you see that the enslaved individuals appeared so distressed. And these distressed looking people were all Africans. And funny enough, they were standing at the African side of the divide. They were not only distressed, you could see some of them had chains, shackles. The atmosphere in that picture is very solemn. And you also get elements that highlights the historical impact that this slave trade had. These are things we don't want to talk about, but we are going to find ways of enacting and depicting them. When you look in the picture, you will see that there were devastations, like terrible impacts that like the torn village had. When you look at the people, you see they were grieving family members. I like that scene. It's like quite realistic, and it also has this historical. So with that image, I started discussing yesterday. Because before you come and talk about NDC and MPP, before you come and question John Mahama about his State of the Nation address or what what's his name, Akufo-Addo did, you have to understand that foolishness we are going to celebrate in 2 days and call it Independence Day is already a fucking lie, because before the supposed colonial masters came, we were born independent. We were born free. But our Africans sold us to these people. We don't want to. We have lost sight of that fact. It has been perceived to be crimes and evil that was done by who? By who? The Westerners to Africa. The Western world is so evil. They did this to us. You remember the slave trade? That was this was that. Now, you and I have gone to school. Eh? We know that the word trade, Trade, that word, it indicates that there was buying and selling. So if the word trade means there was buying and selling, then the slave trade means there was buying and selling of the slaves. So first of all, We have to stop using the word and the white man took our ancestors and they took them. They bought them. Okay? So irrespective of whatever the Westerners did, how they even packaged our people like sardine, we can give a list of the details of everything the European did wrong, but we also need to have a list of the detailed wrongdoings of the Africans of those centuries, who we can believe were the ones who sold the slaves. Because, please, were the white men born in Africa? So if no white man was born in Africa, then who do you think was selling the Africans? It wasn't the white man. It wasn't the white man. The white man there, he was buying the slaves, guaranteed. They've accepted it. When are your ancestors going to accept the truth? That should be our concern, not this current modern supposed politics. Problem, no, it is deeper than what we are saying. What do you think our African leaders, our forefathers, our grandfathers, what in your opinion did they do morally wrong, criminally wrong, humanly wrong? You know, I'm not saying the white man did well. Oh. I'm not saying don't go and tell the white man that you need them to pay you for what you understand. I'm saying whilst you are blaming the white man, kindly don't forget the people from your own bloodline who helped these white men and women to sustain this atrocity. It was very atrocious. And unless we find ways of getting our own Africans to be accountable, NDC, NPP is the least of our problem. Unless we go to this House of Chiefs, supposed kings, whoever not, unless everybody is going to be, the question will be how are we going to get Africans to be accountable for their part in the slave trade? That will be the question of the year, or the decade, or is it the century? Thank you so much for sharing. This question that I have asked, Professor Wagner, thank you so much, Prof. Abdul Idris, Abuaji, Mudosu, welcome to all of you. Muntio, in 2 days, we are going to celebrate some supposed independence. And my question to you is, independence nature, I say, Abrofno no more high. And son Abrofno Babe high. Omu ye day, omu tonye, brony put your one tonye. I have been inviting you to my breakfast, my liquid breakfast. Mango, pineapple, and orange. Me and I'm squeezing my dear. So I ask again, before you come and chastise and scream and rightfully point out all the faults of NDC, rightfully point out all the wrongs MPP did, why they lost. After all of that, unana neton unana. Enti broni nye nimpa boni ni. Na se manhwe masase we yanka ne ye mfiri ho a. Ye nuanom ne ye kum ne ye yerem ne ye mba ne ye hwam no mo abotire no. They are all going to end up coming home. They will all have to come home because whatever the white man is using as reason to sack them, is a fact. Whatever the white man has as a reason to sack our people are factual. We are evil and we are doing great disservice to their countries. If you need to pay attention and make sure that you people are forming groups as of immediately to address this issue. Okay. The transatlantic slave trade, we all know undoubtedly it was a horrific crime. And in the national crimes done in Africa, Zoe Akwaba, Edna Akwaba, crimes done in Africa. Yes, crimes done in Africa. It was also crimes done against humanity. Crimes done in Africa, no. Uti abeka say Bruni Kwan de Africa. Grace Boati Akwaba. Okay. But whilst the Western world has accepted their part, expressed guilt, remorse, all of that, and continue to give us aid, we have a culture of justifying what our ancestors did and not even having the conversation at all. You can argue the fact that the Westerners were the primary drivers of this slave trade system. Thank you so much. Hey, she had mistress. Thank you. Thank you, Akaba. But we talk about this by the office. Miss Berry, Akaba, tree head mistress, why in Yamisha? Yes, she had mistress. Good morning, or good morning. If you are sitting in the conference and you are still blaming the white man for wanting to sack your people, or you are living abroad, three roses, believing that Donald Trump is rather evil, but you are not going to find the reason why Donald Trump is angry with Africans and correct it so that Donald Trump will stop sending your people home and we will have a great relationship with Donald Trump, the US, every other country henceforth for generations to come. If you are not interested in changing the story, that will let these people feel not intimidated by us. Thank you. Oh, Jesus. Oh, my God. Thank you. We can lie. Oh, tree head mistress. With the other one, we and commodium. Mekan brofo now translate tree. Before we come and talk about NDC and NPPA, let's go back to the source of the whole problem. Moral things are many This is not the time to come and talk about Ghana's economy, because Ghana's economy is going to go way down south when, not if, when all of our people in the diaspora come home. Mona Moti diaspora, big quest. Akwaba. Mona Moti diaspora no muntio. Se wo wa krata tie me because say before to meet the krata fi Asian Americans ho e Uganda. Say to me pamo Americans efi Liberia, Ghana. Said Nigerians to me, Ghana must go. NASA what ho ene wa bra 2022 na nanado danko akufado okojina simpie so ekoka trade the for demand oh, they demand apology, formal apology from the international, from the Western world. And this went viral. And as a Ghanaian, I was so happy for a while. I thought, so if you used to like it, I understand you. But please, with the current events unfolding, do you want to hold on to that lie? So we were busuafo wa abrochire na sa wa utimu no wo feel say abrofo no yet too much instead of being honest say wo kra wonim say wo nuamo omo wia nuama wa abrochire ho brew wonim say omo ye fake enyoma bebre ye won krofo omo ti abrochire omo ni omo family members wo Ghana omo ye sakawa omo no receive alert no almost pe abrochire ni bia akwa aka na se broni no akohu loopholes no na se broni ni se da mi sisi anu a na ya aso na ye na ye di bone no ya se aka se broni je na ya ba fie ma ye nanam na broni no tu ye fi ni krom broni ni tu wo fi ni krom a wo ba wo abusuafo na almost started ton woman. The cycle will just repeat itself. If we don't amend the foolishness of our history to make the significant correction that not only did the Western world, the supposed colonial masters. Why I suppose is, how can you be selling human beings to these people? And now you want to claim that those people are so bad, they were lording over you. Hajia back to Akaba. Every single African man or woman who sold a slave was morally wrong and needs to be held accountable because they betrayed their own people. Now, if we are not sad that our own people, our own fathers, our own grandfathers, our own husbands, our own in-laws, our own cousins, distant tribes, people, same language, same dialect, our own schoolmates, however you are related, sold us. You don't think that was betrayal? But you can hold on for centuries and be angry about the person that bought you. You have been angry at the person that bought you as a slave. And you have completely omitted your own blood that bundled you up like a sheep to meet these European traders almost next to their ships. They were anchored standing close to their ships. In case any ship broke out, they were on their ships. But you dragged, our forefathers dragged us. That was betrayal of their own. African rulers and traders sold fellow Africans, including prisoners of war. Until today, 2025, you will have some blockhead damn-and-go human beings telling Frafra people, or is it Frafra or Fulani people, one of the two, that you people were our slaves. You must keep worshipping us. So most times, prisoners of war were captured when there was slave raid. Slave raid. Hi, how are you doing, God? Thank you so much for liking my video. Your uncles and aunties, your stepfathers, your own blood people, they were doing slave raids. They'll go from village to village, throw out whatever, gunpowders, whatever, destabilize the town, kill the ones who were very strong and resisted to be caught, capture the weak ones, and sold them. Please, please, when are we going to have the discussion on that one? When are we going to stop talking about the white man who, TikTok, forgive me as well, they were selling prisoners of war and criminals. You know, now you can't go and question why they think somebody is a criminal. We have criminals in jails. Before the white man came and built prisons to keep these prisoners and give them some refinement, put them through courses. You know, people who got their GEDs in prisons. Do you know people in Ghana who reform attire you class or reform? So from near master now, no, the prison by now. When your family member is even an armed robber and they are caught, they are not sold away to other countries as slaves. Slaves who were supposed to be subjected to anything of the choice of the slave master. Then the supposed colonial master, who was so evil, was the one who built prisons to hold these criminals so they are not sold, so they can be reformed and brought back into society, so they can have amnesty, so their cases can keep going to trial. Our ancestors, when they say you are a criminal, Selua, even if you were not a prisoner of war or a criminal, sometimes our ancestors were selling innocent civilians to European slave traders. This was a fundamental betrayal of human dignity and kinship. Fundamental betrayal of human dignity that Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, who is supposed to be a human rights lawyer, when he went to ask for reparation for a supposed racial healing, Nana Addo did not remember that our people who sold our people, they had committed the most fundamental crime that ever existed. Because selling ourselves, being able to sell another fellow African, was the fundamental betrayal of human dignity and kinship. Also, to know that our ancestors, they prioritized what they were going to gain materially. Nanya omubenya hudi omubenya ni din a yebebo omu castle obi aye museum obi atukoya na wa chese oti business class obi ho tukonye adwuma da ordinaba wa kra tukwan oba na wa besi hotel ni kun ye adwuma hey put me the bonnet to said yen would billionaire or Ghana. That time no, not priority ni say ubetumi aton slaves dodo. Na wonso wato Rolls Royce. Na wo kwa na wo hye suit, na wonso ukra walking stick. Wo keke bi. Yen na yen ye fie sika ohofo no. Omo ni medwuma na omo nana mo ye. Ye fie sika oho. Sika no so de wo tam. Ada no mo sisi na kakraka esisi ho nipa ntumi ntinem. Omo ko school ko si hin na omo abobọ dam na omo ntumi ware omo ntumi omo manya papa. Sa ebusia no. Mo ko bisa se sika no efiri hin. Ahohom of nkrofo na mo nana mo ton mo no e na edi munya enya aban. That time no na ye nanamu na omu ye mpanimfo no rulers no na omu nyehia omu enye another Ghanaian ne kanko ana ne welfare o there be they prioritized wealth over humanity. This was not a white man. This was Ghanaians, Nigerians, Angolans, all fucking African slave traders. They were not prioritizing our welfare. They didn't give a fuck about humanity. But they have convinced us that it is rather the white man who murdered our humanity. Many African elites engaged in the slave trade purely for profit. Purely for profit. Not that, hey, there is now so much money in spare parts business. They were discussing the business of buying and selling human beings as goods and services. And discuss this much. No, the problem starts from your family house. That's your family house that they sold slaves from. That is the iniquities of your fathers that is visited upon you and generations to come. And the fact that they are so clever that they can lie to us to believe that it is rather the white man who has been washed us. African elites engaged in the slave trade purely for profit, exchanging human beings for guns, alcohol, and luxury goods, thereby valuing material wealth over human lives. What's here and then another clerk no baby girls be equal to a trade mufu. Esther say da 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 da. Nana clerk mu di omu kuni pa saying. Thank you. Omo mu yesika drone. Say no cra. Onye nipa ba ku mienu bi ku omo a wenya sika tam. Ba mo nana mo no. No mo ton nipa in thousands, in hundreds. And profono small omo so omo kochi slaves ni brano. So omo kona se slaves no omo hu odin dodo a ye ku omo. They were murdered for being strong. How many black people have been slaughtered by white people just for being strong? How many? How many? Oh, Honorable Ns S0Ld Afr, you've made my morning. I say wise one, thank you. No, Honorable, me say, more if you are really in parliament, if you are really an honorable, before, during, current, however, honorable, we will question you people with tooth and nail. Meanwhile, me say Independence Day na ye bedi no. in 2 days, is useless. Because before a supposed colonial master came, we were born free. We were born independent. It was our own African leaders, our African rulers, our African merchants, my great-grandfathers, those who own homes on the coastlands, those old in Kanwefie, those were the people, the richest people who were selling the slaves, because Abrafunomuba, they docked right there, anchored right there. Then we, the Africans, we drag fellow Africans from wherever we captured them. We dragged them. They were exchanging these human beings for what? Guns, alcohol, black label, blue label, and luxury goods, gloves, suits, jacuzzis, air conditioners, cheese, shoes, dressing, luxury cars, And because these were the priorities, they were valuing material wealth over African human lives. Please, this was not done by the white man. This was done by our people. It was our people who were encouraging wars. That was morally wrong. Almost to hunt up and America for Nama we mo kwam when ya one need was seen nanamo. No more tinawa, no more shishan top. Said ya beya. Almost yes, if you when you tio more. Almost bet me a cock so. No more could twash almost so. No more I could your more day. No more chit no more. They were encouraging wars and slave raid. Hey, she said, "I name Rene. See youth here. I see omo yesakawa boys. Omo etu egu prom. Omo time bia. Omo be ready abechichin maya. Ako tutu amoche. Nka ye beden. Oh, you think it's inhumane? Our ancestors did this. And we are not having these conversations. And that is why yebusian for no omo money yen kakra no omo beba ube sombra. Media yebusian for muti abroche beba me pao. Say a block a quina. Ye to the kwa abroche bano. Even though you're quite a within houses, ye block is a chance na ibahamio. And tisesia ya enye finalized. Instead, somebody musika beko lawyers akesia ako fight America system no. Mo fa musika nimbom. Mo hia lawyer. Mo hia mo nokre. Mo hia mo amu signatures. You need Ajoyebwa. Thank you so much. You need your truth. You need to go with the raw emotions. Mo na mo ti abrecho. Lawyer for nobody musika o. Oni mu process ade na okọ file no. Enye adwuma obe mamu false hope. Mama tia ni retainer. And the other question answer say me dey me try ye. Me say mwankasa munkambom Samson wa menka say endu Switzerland. Menka say we are ma card bio because in the long run your country of origin on in Ghana. Mona muti abrochire no. Mesra mo mumanye mo ehiasem sa na time your friend is saying Central Region campaign Donald Trump or the Jachikwe in Bessie board my Jachikwe won't find na me catch mo amuti abrochire say sa dual citizenship adiana abrofo kra ma mo kwan e ma mo mutumi enjoy wo But Sawuba Ghana, na ye say, Sawu pro bi so krata dia, ne ye ma ukwan, ema wumbedi akonwa pono. Monhwe nka ho asem. A friend me by saying Emmanuel Essien. Me who said why live that same night, me who she on it again. Muna muti abrochiro. Delegate system. Say a betrim for flag bearer and NIFA MPP especially. Merieka. Donald Trump aba or see idea yo was starting catching some come. We still want to hold on to the same lie that has been passed down from generation to generation. Say, I'm in the say, Mumu Jimmy enti, Mudi Emma nya Donald Trump ma Emma so. Obi Jimmy say, Ata Samuel Akwaba. Minu ka say, Obi was a Jimmy enum. Adi ebeya Donald Trump asema waka no ensi. But sani bagro no on hu nyansa se on fra ni nuanu a oni no yakosa empire no no mu nyina ya no kro enye signature entry petition enko physically enko ye yakigaka de ni say press conference so say press Trudeau any probia omo akantam say obia on fi kro no mu free ho no yen ya yawo kro no mu mi se ebedru ho nyina yen ya yawo kro no mu no yen nyina yen botwi yen sa petition we na yen kan anibre so edika petition mo fa bi mbra John se mo pese on fa ni nto asemi mu globally ebe boamo mon kantre Ata Samuel also fine queen. Oh, nice skin. Share mo petition mo fa baako mbra John Mahama. Na mo meka nche John Mahama say asem we global. Thank you so much. Enti anfa na no ntumu globally. He is a very communicationist because this is his field in college. John Mahama needs to be very vocal globally to save all of Africa, especially Ghana. And another petition, not insult, needs to be addressed to Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo so that he can go and retract that thing he said that the white people owe us apology. Now to demand an apology. Say ye Mama entry petition na fan konkoma nkrofo say they should come and change what they have said, and what's his name? JM should start a new conversation. Globally, it also has to go viral. It must go viral. Okay. Mudi amon fanya agro, na montena ho, na mundidi atem, na mo Chini Jonas Owano, on Frank Crawford, now Muninambom or Hilly David. These are the things you people need to do. A bear myself show. Our people were encouraging wars and raid. Do you know why they were encouraging war and raid? After Simpson, after Samuel. They were encouraging war and raid because they needed to meet the increasing demand for slaves. Some African leaders waged wars against neighboring states. They were now even fighting other neighboring countries just so they will get a lot of slaves. They were waging wars against neighboring states or even their own people. Their own people, capturing and selling them instead of seeking peaceful coexistence. That was your father, my great-grandfather, and yours. They were not seeking to coexist peacefully. They were selling themselves. Thank you so much. Thank you. It was our people, our blood relatives, who were complicit in the brutal treatment of slaves. Our people, they were part of the brutal treatment. Many African traders kept captives in inhumane conditions. The dungeon they've gone to show us the door of no return. They've gone to show us, and they were packing them here. Where the fuck were Africans packing Africans before they would transport them from where they captured them to the dungeons? Because mind you, if there is no ship docked, you can't bring the slaves. You can't live here and like maintain all of them. You don't come from here. You have captured them, you are bringing them from somewhere. So you have to know that ship needs to, then you bring. So where you had captured them, how were you keeping them? Were they in hostels? Were they in chalets? Were they in apartments? The Ghanaians captured and sold as slaves. Before you sold them as slaves, how did you keep them? Were they living with you in your homes? Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Atta. No, you were keeping them like we keep our sheep and our goats. And this was done by Africans. Even when the white man got to the other side of the world, they were not putting the slaves under the condition of Africans. But this is a story we don't tell generations after us. We keep passing the stupid lie that the white man is evil. The white man is evil. And now it has caused us that the white man says we should live. How are we? Even if the white man says, irrespective of whatever apology you people make, we will sack you from our countries. It is better that we make that amends. After all, it's over 400 years that someone like me is having this epiphany. So if it takes them forever to then accept, like, okay, now the blacks have seen the truth, so let's even have no borders at all, then that will get to that day. But until we are responsible and accountable, I stand with Trump. Many African traders, slave traders, kept their captives in inhumane conditions before selling them, sometimes forcing them on brutal marches to the coast where they were held in dungeons. Imagine. After they've kept them in cages like goats, fed them through holes. Whilst they're in those cages, they are shackled, they are tied down, fuck their beautiful daughters and wives. In fact, you think they will say that one? Africans no no ready, no kukum papa for no more no no girls when you are penny no de ma abrof no. And yes, I saw no sha obenye sika wo mpa no no be bisant papa no ba no de na ma no de no. Sa inhumane yen kada yakata so yesan gu nsama omo. for these people. And then we hate the white man who, as of today, is still giving us money called IMF. We are going to celebrate independence, but we have IMF. And the IMF, it has stipulations. The white man who gave it to you controls what you use it for. But we are going to celebrate some supposed independence. What are we independent from? The black man, obviously, is not capable of managing any affairs, especially his. Because if we could, IMF will never be Africa beyond age. You people are killing me with the love. I appreciate. Atta, I appreciate. Another terrible thing Africans selling Africans did that we are not talking of, but was morally wrong, is the fact that that act was the destruction of social fabric in Africa. The trade led to the destabilization of African communities, with generations of able-bodied men and women being taken away, leaving the societies vulnerable to decline. They took the able. Hey, yes, they were selling them according to their muscles. They were selling them according to how beautiful the girls were. They were selling them according to how Anani Kayede. They were selling them on so many grounds. You think it is today that they are pricing some virgins off some yacht? You think the Einstein, the guy who, do you think the PDDs happened today? Go and find PDD's generation. He will be from Ghana somewhere. Such genealogy, we should be using it to trace all the rich people who are celebrities there with their indigenous descent from here to come and help us campaign this and set the white man free, because the white man is not the evil one. Our ancestors are. They still are. Now, failure to recognize slavery as a moral wrong. That is another huge thing we need to discuss. Africans, we have this syndrome. Is it a symptom? Is it a what? We have a disease called failure to recognize slavery as a moral wrong. Some African rulers have justified slavery as a continuation of traditional servitude, ignoring the extreme cruelty and dehumanization. Dehumanization. They are no more human beings. They have been dehumanized. Like, you must be a human being. So if they have dehumanized you, because they are not doing things that are done to human beings to you, so you are dehumanized. When it comes to the transatlantic trade, they were all dehumanized. Some African rulers justified slavery as a condition of traditional servitude practices, ignoring the extreme cruelty and dehumanization that came with the transatlantic trade. Apart from the moral wrongdoings, there were also criminal aspects to this, because crime does not expire in Ghana. So under our current standards, today's standards, we will say that our ancestors were kidnapping and human trafficking the people. Yeah. Many Africans actively raided villages and kidnapped men. This would be considered human trafficking today. Why would I say that was war crimes and genocide? The mass killings of those who resisted capture, The mass killings of Africans by Africans who were so strong and were resisting being captured, as well as the deliberate destruction of communities for the sake of slave raids, can be classified as war crimes and crimes against humanity. Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, or a human rights lawyer, he has not voiced anything concerning this, and he should, since he has been able to organize a whole summit for reparation and racial healing. Another criminal act that our ancestors who indulged in slave trade can be charged with today, under today's standards, is aiding and abetting crimes against humanity. Aiding and abetting crimes against humanity. African rulers and merchants subjected millions of Africans to forced labor, brutality, and death, making these African leaders complicit in crimes against humanity. When are we going to find those families and make them accountable for these crimes? Yeah, Rawlings need to be questioned. Yeah, I'll be happy if John Mahama will go and make amends and, with all the families that suffered the firing squads. How many will the firing squad amount to? But those are forefathers. They are aiding and abetting. How many did it murder? Another thing is that those ancestors, they were doing corruption and exploitation. Corruption didn't start anytime in this 19 whatever. No. Many African leaders accumulated their wealth from the slave trade while neglecting their own African people's welfare, effectively selling out their societies for their own personal gains. If that is not our problem, and we are still chastising the white man who only bought us, and we are also wondering why the Western world now wants us deported, well, how are we going to get our African leaders to be accountable? We should have education and acknowledgement, where African nations must openly acknowledge their ancestors' roles in the transatlantic slave trade in schools, museums, and public discussions, just as the Western nations at a point acknowledged their guilt. They have acknowledged their guilt, even if they didn't. Go and listen to Amazing. The Africans need to do to be accountable. Is that if Nana Addo has been able to go and demand apology from the Western world, a formal apology, then I am going to be in his face and all of our faces to say, Africa governments and traditional leaders, Nana Addo, JM, Otikokoswo, African governments and traditional leaders must issue formal apologies, just as some Western nations have already done. Since you went to the reparation and racial healing summit, I beg, we need commemoration and healing programs. We need this because establishing memorials, museums, and reconciliation programs that will acknowledge African complicity can help with historical justice, because the white man needs justice. Yeah. African nations can hold, to invest in communities that were affected by the historical slave trade, promoting development as a form of direct reparations. Nti yɛka akyerɛ wɔn nkuro bi te dɛ Igwe na castles sisi ha na ɛha na dungeons na ahohom no nyinaa wɔn bo efu yɛn na monyɛ sika na efiri slave trade mu baeɛ no sɛ mo adi ne nyinaa mpo a motu gold na mo brɛ yɛn bi na yɛ services slave trade na etutu kuro no na ɛfa yɛn nkorɔfoɔ bebree kɔɔyɛ no at least. We also have to have a collaboration with the African diaspora. Samson Wanina Mayfrewi. African nations should work with descendants of enslaved people to foster and America no enslaved people no go abroad and almost you see okay. We have to collaborate with them. African nations should work with the descendants of enslaved people to foster cultural, economic, and the past. And let me repeat, the goal of this thing I keep repeating here, the goal of this shift I want us to have, that the white man is not the problem, that it is our people who sold us. The goal is not to shift the blame away from Western nations. The goal is to ensure that all the parties involved, especially our African ancestors, all the parties involved in this slave trade, in this dark chapter of history, they all have to take responsibility. Because accountability, truth-telling, wants to go and demand apology, which is what we give in healing. We, the Ghanaians, who have relatives who are being deported, who we are all going to be affected though. It's not only the people who are going to be deported, who are going to have their lives, messed up overnight. Yena yetihana almost sending emane so. Yes, you're bebre. Enti aka eni ena aka hwene ena aka ano aka so. Let's come together. Let's have all these public apologies. Let's go through all the right channels. Let's gather money to fight this cause and correct this history so that we will not suffer henceforth, neither will our generations. Thank you so much for being with me. We will keep the conversation going. I'll try and be back today in the evening. If I am not, I'll be back tomorrow. Have a wonderful one.